All right. And more importantly, I want to thank everybody who is joining us tonight for the Remembering 9/11 tribute. For those of you who are not familiar with Reps for Responders, we are a nonprofit in the Hudson Valley area, and Reps was founded by an active NYPD police officer. Our mission is to support the mental and physical health and well-being of all first responders, active or retired. And to do this, Reps focuses on spreading awareness about mental health in the first responder community and advocates for first responders to reach out for help. By nature of the job, first responders see and experience more traumatic events than their civilian counterparts, and pairing that with everyday stressors, first responders are at a greater risk for mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, PTSD, substance abuse, and suicide. Through fitness, virtual, and hopefully sooner than later, in-person support groups, peer recovery coaching, and community events, Reps for Responders is a safe haven for anyone who joins our community here. They can share their stories, their struggles, and their wins, whether it be about the job or life in general. And Reps for Responders was born not out of just the desire, but of the need to support and advocate for the mental health of the first responder community so that our first responders can better serve themselves and their neighborhoods that they've committed to protecting. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank, who is our founder of Reps for Responders, so that he can introduce our three amazing main speakers of the evening.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who is joining tonight and took their time to come on in. Just please ask to keep yourselves muted, just so the speakers have the time and chance to tell their story and share their strengths, experience, and hope without any interruptions. Again, we really appreciate everyone coming tonight. And we have three fantastic speakers, and I'm very excited to hear from them and share their experience with us. It's an honor and a privilege. We have Keith, who is was a first 9/11 first responder who responded at Ground Zero. We have Kayla. She is a daughter of a fallen first responder hero. And we have Joseph, who is an addiction trauma specialist. So those will be our main speakers tonight. Again, thanks for everyone for joining. And our first speaker is going to be Keith. So Keith, I'm going to mute myself and take the floor, buddy. Thank you.
Okay. Hello to everyone. My name is KeithRoss. I'm a retired police officer. I am now presently an adjunct professor at John Jay College. So if you look at the black boxes with white names, at least half of those are my college students, because college students hate going on camera, which is fine. I am also a first responder. So I was actually there at 9/11. I was actually there prior to the second building going down. And I've been sort of thinking all week, like how I was gonna sort of approach it. So I'm just going to be as brutally honest that there are things that I 100% remember, and there are things that I just sort of possibly blocked out of my memory, maybe misremember a little bit. So I apologize. I'm definitely way old. I'm ancient. So that is that. So one of the things that I was thinking about was what actually saved my life that day, because I was down there prior to that second building coming down, and I'm thinking, well, was it that, was it my brute strength? Was it my brains? And then I remembered, it was this that saved my life, but more on that later. If you remember on September 11th, 2001, it was actually a beautiful day. I actually went outside my apartment today and I was looking around and I'm thinking, holy shit, this like reminds me of that day. It was just it was a beautiful blue day, billowy clouds with just a touch of like that sun's warmth. And like I have to admit, I got a little bit of shivers. I worked at PSA 9, for those of you that don't know, that is the Housing Bureau in Queens. At that time in 2001, I was a member of the Conditions Unit. And what the Conditions Unit was it was a plainclothes unit. And we basically addressed sort of quality of life crimes in the various developments. We really sort of targeted drugs and we sort of targeted prostitution. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. We were always plainclothes, but that day we were in uniform. And I don't even remember why. But our usual thing was we would turn out of the Pominock office, which was in Flushing. Oh, sorry. You know, I promised Frank that I would keep this to 10 minutes, and I forgot to start my timer. So give me like 2 minutes. All right. Okay. I don't remember why we were in uniform, but we were in uniform. But our deal was 4 o'clock, you know, present for duty. We got dressed in uniform. And then what we always did was we went from Flushing, Pominock, and we would go to the Ravenswood satellite. It was sort of tradition that every day we ate at the Bel Air Diner. So we would go Bel Air Diner and then start thinking about what we were going to do that day. And for some reason, this was sort of a quote unquote down day for us. We were just going to sort of hang out. I guess maybe we hit the number for my college students. I will explain that number at a later date. For those of you that are on the job, you understand what I'm talking about. So we're just hanging out, and I go into the satellite, and CNN is on. And this is before, you know, hashtag fake news and all that crap. People actually watch the news and expected to get news. All of a sudden, it's about 8:30, 8:40. All of a sudden, we see a plane go into one of the buildings. And everyone's thinking, holy shit, this must be an accident. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, what the hell happened? And then I don't remember, maybe 10 or 15 minutes later, I think, and I could be wrong on this timeline, the second plane hits. And all of a sudden, you know what? 1 plane accident, 2 planes, this is coordinated. And then obviously stuff happens in Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. as well. And so the first thing, these were the older radios. So some of you might not know, usually for police officers, you stay on your division, whatever that is, but you can also go to a radio band called Citywide, where you're listening to things that are happening in the city. We get on to Citywide, and we're listening, and it's complete bedlam. Now, I had been on the job now about 4 years. So, still a rookie, but I had some time on, and, I sort of had an understanding, and I'm like, the radio's never like this. And I distinctly remember Central calling a level 5. And I'm thinking to myself, sorry to my students, what the fuck is a level 5? Because in the NYPD, there's level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm like, what the hell is a level 5? And you can just hear this complete bedlam. And we start getting mobilized. Now, we were in uniform, and I was in this conditions unit, and my boss, good guy, real squared away, believed that we should all be squared away. So if we're going down and we're going to be mobilized, we have to have everything. Now, one of the things, at least back in the day, I'm not sure, Frank, you could probably answer this better than me. If you're mobilized, you're supposed to have your riot helmet. Well, me being the jerk that I am, I left it in my locker in Pominock. And so Mike was like, all right, we're going to get down there. Now, bear in mind, we're in Astoria. We're right by the Queensboro Bridge. We can get into Lower Manhattan in about 10 to 20 minutes. And I'm like, bro, I don't have my helmet. So we scream from Astoria back to Flushing so I can grab my helmet. From Flushing, we now start heading down. And, I'm going to age myself, but it used to be that when you were going over the Midtown Tunnel, to your left, you could see the Twin Towers. And it was just a very odd experience to only see one of those towers. So we get down there, let me say on or about, and these are really, really very approximate times, about 9:30, 9:40, somewhere in there. And we're traveling into Lower Manhattan, and we're all looking around. Now, this was 5 sort of alpha male types, and we were just stone cold silent because no one could believe what it looked like was like the bombing and destruction that was going on in the Middle East at that time. This stuff doesn't happen in the United States of America. This stuff doesn't happen in New York City, the epicenter of America. And we're just floored. So we eventually get down to whatever the muster point is. Now we're talking about 10:15. So we're hanging out, waiting for instructions, because obviously, there's all this chaos going on around. And for those of you that are not on the police department, don't expect the police to always be non-chaotic as well. They're dealing with chaos in a fluid dynamic situation, so the ideas are going to change from moment to moment. And I do remember this. My radio was blaring loud because, everything is just loud. There's tons of fire trucks and emergency vehicles going out. And I hear a female's voice over our air. So it has to be a police officer. And she's like, "Oh my God, it's coming down." Now, I actually have to admit to you that for a long time, I thought that I imagined that, or that I've just sort of played it into like my own dramatic film reel of 9/11. About a year and a half later, the job sent us to a support session because one session is going to fix all the PTSD incurred during this whole thing. And at least 3 other cops said they heard the same exact thing. To put a name to that voice was Maura Kelly. She was one of the 23 police officers that died that day. I remember, basically, we conducted traffic control. Obviously, tons and tons of civilians not knowing what to do. And we don't really know what to do, but when people are facing crisis, who do they look to? Well, they look to the police. And when they look to the police, they don't want to see chaos or crisis in their police. They want to see their police have the answer right then and there. Go to any Midtown cop and they'll tell you at least 20 different Starbucks in a 1-mile radius because they have to know that stuff. So I just remember that was a 20-hour day. We started at 0400. I got back to my house at about 0200 that morning, somewhere in there. And I remember when I was down there, now I was at that point married and I had 2 young kids. I lived in Floral Park and my kids went to a daycare center in Valley Stream. If you remember, there was a big cell tower on building 1 which collapsed. So the cell service was terrible that day. I had Verizon at that time and I actually got through to my wife. And the only thing I said to her was, "Get the kids home." And in retrospect, I know that doesn't make any sense. They were 20 miles away from this site. Nothing was really going to happen, but in my mind, I'm in crisis mode. And how much safer are they going to be in the house than in this daycare? 2 days later, September 13th, I'm back down there at the detail doing security. And there are 2 things that I remember about that day. One, there was a scare that Liberty Plaza was going to come down. And I believe that was the day that the director of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, her name is Christy Todd Whitman, assured everybody that the air was safe to breathe. In retrospect, I think she had spoken a little too quickly. I'm at like 10 minutes. Can you give me 2 more minutes, Frank? And I'll make this real quick, I promise. As a housing cop, we were sent with the Detective Bureau to the landfill to sift through all the stuff that was coming from the World Trade Center. So I can remember, I don't want to be too gory or too eerie, but yeah, we would see like bones, and they were definitely human bones. We would see people's wallets, and you could take out their IDs, and like these were people that lived, and now they're not living because of this. I will admit to taking a couple of mementos. There were some World Trade Center admission stubs, and I took them. I don't even know why, but I had to. The last thing that I'm going to talk about, and then I promise you, Frank, about 9 years later, in 2010, I developed a small lump right here. I went to my general practitioner. He said, well, let me give you some antibiotics, figuring that would reduce the bump. Cool. Took the antibiotics. I did, and not like everyone else, I actually finished the bottle. I think it was 1 or 2 a day. Didn't go down much. So went to a specialist. They did a biopsy, and lo and behold, he thought that what I had was Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I go to a second specialist, and this specialist says, well, it could be Hodgkin's lymphoma, or it could be this other disease called Castleman's disease. They look very much alike. The cell structures are very much alike. But he would have to remove the lump and then biopsy this lump to actually know for sure. So they remove the lump, and lo and behold, it's Hodgkin's lymphoma. I go out sick. I do a 3-month round of chemotherapy. I do a 30-day round of radiation therapy, and knock on wood, as of right now, I'm about 10 years cancer-free. I would just like to say that cancer, this is gonna sound weird, has changed my life for the better. Most people would think, oh shit, you went through cancer. How the hell did you even deal with that? You know what? I did deal with it. I came out on the other side, and I think I'm better for it. I'm definitely not perfect, as both Joe and Frank can attest to, but I know I'm better than I was. And each and every day, I'm striving to be better and better. I want to thank everyone for listening to me, and I'm going to turn it back over to Frank, I believe.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for your share. Thank you for your service and what you did that day. And I'm very happy and glad that we were able to cross paths and that you are cancer-free. So thank you very much for your service. And you reminded me, I just want to apologize that I should have done this in the beginning. I just want to give a quick moment of silence for everyone that day who made the ultimate sacrifice, to everyone who made the ultimate sacrifice years later. As we know, many were affected, and for all the family and friends that were suffered from lost ones that day. So. We will never forget that day. And thank you again, Keith, for your share. I am going to mute myself and give the floor to Kayla.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Awesome. So hi, I'm Kayla. My name is Kayla Coughlin. Thank you, Keith, for your story, and thank you, Frank, for hosting this. So you're probably all looking at me going, what does this 9-year-old know about 9/11? But my name is Kayla Coughlin, daughter of Sergeant John Coughlin, who was killed on September 11, 2001. I was 6 years old. My sisters are Erin and Tara. Erin was 16, Tara was 13, and like I said, I was 6 years old. Just like Keith said, a lot of the stuff, I remember so clearly some things, and then other things, I don't know if the memories just aren't there, if protecting myself, my brain shut off. But I'm going to tell you guys everything that I do remember. I was in first grade. It was my first week of first grade. And I don't remember the event of 9/11. I was in school. I went to Fields Elementary School. I'm from Rockland County, so Fields Elementary, miles and miles away. We didn't see it. We couldn't see smoke, from our school. So I went through the whole day just normally. The day got abnormal when I got off of my bus. I walked into my home, and like I said, my sisters at the time were 16 and 13. So usually when I got home, it would be loud. It would be, they were fighting over whatever, or they were joking about school. They were just, and we are loud. But I walked into the house and it was silent. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Is anybody home? And I walk upstairs and I look in the TV room and they're watching the news. They're dead silent watching the news, just glued to it. And I was like, why are we watching the news? Like, that's stupid. Like, we should be watching like MTV. And I go in and they're just glued to it. And there are these 2 buildings and they're on fire. And they're just like so upset. And I was like, I get it. These buildings are on fire, but okay. Like, I finally asked, I was like, what's going on? And my oldest sister, Erin, was like, this is down in New York City. Like, it's awful. A lot of people are dying. And I was like, a lot of people are dying. Because in my little mind, those buildings were empty. Because when a building is on fire, everybody stands up and quickly leaves. That building was empty. And that plane was empty. It was just some kind of mistake. And then I started seeing the people jumping. And I was like, oh no, okay, this is bad. But my sisters were still so upset. And I was like, what is wrong? Like, why are you guys so affected? And Erin turned to me and she said, Daddy's down there. And I was worried for a second, but then I was like, oh, well, you know what? Thank God Daddy's down there, because he's the best cop and he's the smartest man and he's going to get everything under control. He's going to save everyone. It's a good thing that Daddy's down there and we can all relax now. And I just went out to my day. My mom was a nurse in Englewood Hospital, which is right across the George Washington Bridge. So they expected all these people to come in. They didn't. And my mom left anyway. She was like, I got to get home to my kids. So my mom's home. And the next thing I remember is that night, I'm sitting on the floor with my Barbies. And my mom comes in, having just had a phone call. And she said, I have to tell you girls, she goes, Daddy's missing. And we said, what does that mean? She said, that means that he could be, just hasn't found anybody. The radios aren't working. He might not have found anyone. My dad also didn't have a cell phone. So we were just very reliant on radios and him checking in and somebody finding him. She said he could be in the rubble. They're still finding people. She said he could be in a hospital. And even like, it took till I was like 18 for me to finally put together when she said he's in a hospital, that she meant patient in a hospital. You know, I was 6 years old and he was Superman, you know, like he wasn't hurt. So my sisters were really nervous. So I immediately was like, okay, shit, like in my own little kid way. My mom then was taken by one of the guys in my dad's truck. ESU is broken into trucks. So one of my dad's buddies from work took my mom down to the police headquarters, where she stayed for a while with all the other widows and one widower, Jim Smith, Moira Smith's husband. And we just waited. And every single day we waited. And that was awful. You were just sitting there just waiting. And it was just so much despair. And I just did everything I could to avoid it. I played with my toys. My mom's sister and her mother stayed with us. And I just remember standing by the door, just looking through the door and just willing my dad to walk through it. You know, I was like, any minute now, here he comes. Any minute now, he's going to walk through that door and I'm going to be the first person to meet him. He's going to come through that door. And every day was like that. And we just waited for my mom to come home or my mom to report back any information. And she would report back what she could report back, but there was no information. It was a complete mess down there, as anybody that was there can attest to. There was no information to be shared. Finally, about a week later, no sign of my dad, no body recovered. My mom had to make the decision to have my father declared dead. She and her brother and a few of the guys from the truck went and did just that. And then immediately after, she drove back home and told my sisters and I. And even to the last minute, you know, she called she was like, come here, I got to talk to you guys. And she said, Daddy's not coming home. And I was like, what? Okay, so he was found, but he can't come home. Like, they got to keep him on the pile. Like, you know, there's a lot of work going on down there. And she said, Daddy's in heaven. And we fell apart. You know, I don't have to tell you guys all of that. We absolutely fell apart. But I just remember being 6 years old and looking my mom in the face and saying, well, I want to go to heaven too. And like, you know, my mom had to deal with that. So that, you know, I went from having this amazing, perfect childhood of my sisters and my dad. My dad was an aggressively loving father. And then all in an instant of watching a plane hit buildings, my childhood was over. And the people that I depended the most on at that time was other cops. We immediately were just enveloped in this love of all the guys from Truck 4, where my dad worked, and all the other cops that were around. So much so, like, they helped in so many ways. We no longer had the big guy to hug at the end of the day when we were scared, when we were upset. So they took over. I didn't have a father to take in on Father's Day to school and talk about his job. Richie Hardigan, one of the cops that my dad worked with, he came in and was the father on Father's Day. But one thing that was so important to me was I remember watching that footage that Keith was talking about that we saw of, over there for so long, of just Al-Qaeda ruling the Middle East and destroying it and all the debauchery. And I remember watching that, and at 6 years old, I was like, oh my gosh, that's here. That's going to be here soon. And we went into the truck. We'd go into the truck all the time to visit the guys, and we'd make them feel better. They'd make us feel better. And I remember one day I was off, and Billy Madigan, one of the cops, got down in my face and he said, Kayla, what's up? What's going on? Like, you're really off. And I was like, I'm scared. He was like, you're scared? What are you scared of? And I was like, I'm scared that the bad guys are going to come and, get to my house and kill my mom and, do what they've been doing on the news. And my mom was like, oh my God, like, she didn't know I was scared of this. And I remember Billy's eyes watered, and he picked me up and in his huge bear hug, and he said, Kayla, that's not going to happen. He goes, and he explained to me the logistics of just there to here. And he also explained to me just how, it's the entire army will not let that happen. All the military, the NYPD won't let that happen. So finally at that moment, I wasn't scared of that anymore, but I just being in this group right now is just makes me think of how important it is to voice these things and how important it is to have each other. And, that's just, my mom was smart enough to get my sisters and I into, as much help as we might have needed after 9/11. I still go for help now. But it's that has brought me to the point that I'm at today. And I think what you guys are doing is great. After 9/11, I was 6 years old and I was angry. I was always angry, always sad. And I was 6. I could not continue to live like this for the rest of my life. So getting that help is what got me to the point that I remember when I was 15 years old, somebody asked me, they're like, do you hate the men that killed your father? And I said, no, I pity them. I pity them. I don't hate them. I forgive them because I could have been them. If the roles were, you have no idea the anger that was in me toward them. So the fact that I had a place to turn to with my rage and a place to turn to with my hurt and a support group, I didn't have to hold it and let it fester and let it infect me the way it has with people like them and other hate groups, that there are hate groups. So just, I think what 9/11, just like Keith said, his cancer taught him some things in life. 9/11 has taught me, just don't let that overtake you. Do something about the hurt that's inside you. Do something about all the shit that you got to see. So that's my 10 minutes. So thanks.
Thanks, Kayla. Thanks for sharing your story, and very sorry for your loss, and for being so courageous and brave. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to mute myself and pass it over to Joseph.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joseph Lanzone. My profession is a profession that usually comes up in the joke of, if you're having a crisis at home or you're attacked on the street, do you call a social worker? I'm the social worker. And what I've learned, and number one, really through my 9/11 experience, is that in one way, roles have to be delineated in normal life, let alone a crisis. But what my experience taught me was that there's an inner first responder, I believe, in all of us. And I know from my own personal experience, long before 9/11, having gone through some trauma myself in my youth, that anything can happen to anybody. That morning, as Keith, you reminded me, when I left my home, going up to the health center in Pomona, New York. I'm also in Rockland County. The sky looked like bright turquoise to me, and it really, really, my eyes were just drawn to the color. I felt really great. The day before, I had just taught my first class at Fordham University Graduate School of Social Service. And I felt like I was, not on top of the world, but like almost, because somehow, some way I was teaching in a graduate school. And also clinically directing an agency in Rockland County that was a substance abuse program. That day, I chaired a meeting of about 50 school social workers from Rockland County, and the topic was how to manage a crisis. And we had a speaker come from Four Winds Hospital, and she was going to speak. She started her talk, and as she got going, one of our colleagues came in late and said, "Joe, excuse me, I have to make an announcement. I just got out of my car, and it said on the radio that a plane just hit the World Trade Center." And what I'm thinking is like a little Piper. Was it like somebody drunk, and they just got their first private plane and they didn't have directions? I mean, I never could have imagined what was going to happen next. The speaker needed some copies of things made. I went to the office and found a group of secretaries crowded around a desk, all crying their eyes out around a little transistor radio. And I said, "What's going on?" And they told me that 2 planes had hit, the World Trade Center. Both towers were in flames, that a plane was missing, and that a report had just come in that the Pentagon had been hit. So I was just, minorly blown away at that point. Went back to the group and I said, "You got to get back to your schools, because obviously this is something big, and your kids are going to need you." On my way back to my agency, I called town hall. I worked for a town here in Rockland County. Called the supervisor's office and said that I was available if he needed anything. And he said, "Yeah, come up to my office right away. I'm forming a crisis management team." And I said, "Okay." I had an idea of what that would entail, but when I got there, all the department heads of the town were there. Town police, sheriff's offices, hazmat was on its way up from New York, and I certainly immediately got more of a sense of like, this is a lot bigger than I first thought. The chief of police came up to me and said, "Joe, would you come with me?" And the police department is part of town hall. We walked into his office. He opened a drawer. He told me to put my right hand up, and then said a couple things and put a sergeant's badge around my neck and said, Sergeant Sal?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Sal's on his way. He's going to pick you up. You're going to be with him all day at the commuter train station in Suffolk, New York," which was just north of us. And we flew down with lights blaring and sirens, and the day began to speed up mentally for me. When I got there, there were a lot of people at the station waiting for trains to go north, and there were already groups of people collecting on in a seating area, and I didn't have a script. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. So I went into social work behavior, and I just said hello to people who were sitting alone and in groups. A woman asked me, she said, "Officer, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." She told me that she was very upset because she missed her train down to work. And she said, I work at the trade center. And, you know, from what I've been able to hear just from inside the coffee stand, you know, my friends are there and I feel terrible that I'm not with them because maybe I could be helping. That kind of set the tone even more for the rest of the time at the train station because my whole day was spent really responding to questions, being called officer. If it had been a happy event, would have been something I would have like, you know, just been ecstatic about and laughed about and shared with all my friends who know that, you know, I definitely wasn't cut out for that kind of work. But I got this immediate feeling of seriousness and that people needed some direction. And the direction they needed was based on, you know, what they were experiencing in an ongoing crisis. And around 11, no, really more like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the first commuter train came up from the city. The doors opened, I'm on the platform. I wanted to position myself so I could, you know, help her answer questions. And the trains were packed. People just got pushed out of the doors and everyone was covered in white. It looked like white powder or white ash. Faces, hands, their suits, their dresses, their legs. Many people's legs were bleeding and hands were bleeding. And everyone had like wide eyes with like a blank stare. And it really, really scared me for a minute in the sense of like, you know, am I dreaming this? And we're just reaching out, you know, physically, just to, you know, to ask questions at the talk. I pointed everybody to the parking lots, et cetera, and this continued, you know, what was almost like an hourly ritual into the night with the trains coming back from the city. The first in the afternoon were people that had been down there at the trade center. And I was getting more and more of a sense of the magnitude of the tragedy. At about 3:30, there was this rumble from the north, and it turned into this roar. I could feel my heart beginning, you know, to beat faster. And a squadron of I believe 15s, flying real tight and real low, came over the train station, heading south. So I knew that they were going to the city, and immediately the idea in my mind just flashed: this must be World War III. And I'm standing here, you know, in public with a police badge on, and I don't have a gun, and I don't have any training, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But you know, events pull us to what needs to be done. And the rest of the day was helping people off the train. The parking lots were filling up at night, probably like in reverse of what it usually is every day there. And I remember at sunset, the parking lots were so bright. Everybody had their lights on in their cars, and they were obviously waiting for people to come home. So I went out in the parking lot and I just started walking up to cars and talking to people. What struck me was it was mostly women with little kids in the car, and seeing the kids just looking confused, and the women trying to not break down, but saying, you know, have you heard anything, you know, officer, about, you know, anywhere where we could find a list of who's in hospitals and who may be, you know, home, you know, just wandering on the streets delirious, because all I know right now is that my husband is missing. It felt like hundreds of times in 2 hours that was being replayed. And finally, after midnight, I got a ride back to town hall, to my car. I came home, and then for the first time I saw the videotapes of the planes hitting the buildings and the buildings coming down, and everything else that had happened that day. And I was in another place. I felt during the day that my mind kept slowing down, and that at one point I was watching myself from like a distance. What I understand today is, that was my trauma response going into play. It was a day that absolutely changed my life. The next day, I started a support group for the town through our agency for families, and got calls that day alone. Just spent most of the day on the phone answering calls because the local radio station announced that we had a support group, and most of the calls were from women. Most of them were telling me that their husbands were missing, but would it be okay if they came to the support group anyway? And I said, of course. And we held our support group in our suffering site. Since then, what I have realized is hate and evil and rage and out of control anger creates such incredible suffering and pain for all of us as human beings. When the situation occurred, being in Rockland County, it was like concentric circles of a bomb going off at World Trade Center and then spreading up into the suburbs. One funeral after the next for many months. And I'd met a lot of people in that day that I went to the funerals. And it had a major impact. I don't think I ever felt so empty and skillless, and at the same time so in the right place at the right time. And I just went with the motion of what was going on. I thank my higher power for the experience. I don't question his motivations, but I'm really sure that I know what he wants us to be doing for each other. That day clinched it for me. Frank, I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart to let me share a very tiny little story of a person who went through not the deep pain and suffering, but still today I am ready to respond, and you had a lot to do with that today, and I'm very grateful, and I really appreciate Kayla and Keith sharing their stories as well, and that's it for today.
Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate you sharing. And again, thank you to Keith and Kayla, all three of you guys, for sharing your strength, experience, and hope. And I think it was a very powerful night from three different perspectives, and really shows how not just the first responder down there was affected, but everyone in New York area and around the whole country. So it was really it was very special. And I want to piggyback off what Keith said. Keith said one session wasn't going to change everything when he had that session 9/11, a year and a half after 9/11. And it's just like one day of working out is not going to make you lose 20 pounds, one diet. And that's why, Reps for Responders was created. And every Sunday night, we do have a support group. And it's not just for first responders, it's for friends and family. First responders, and just encouraging, if anybody wants to come and share, reach out. We're here for you. I'm going to leave our information in the chat box if you guys want to reach us. But I also, we have about 10 minutes. I want to give anyone a chance if they have any questions or comments to the speakers. Just unmute yourself and ask any questions, and we'll go from there. So we'll see if anyone has any questions or comments. Okay.
Don't be shy.
Hi, it's Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi,
Hi,
how are
Susan.
you? I just want to thank all the speakers that we had. I've been part of the group now for about 3 weeks, and I'm also the daughter of a 9/11 first responder, so that really meant a lot for you guys to all share your stories and experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming. Anyone else before we wrap up?
I don't have a question, but I just want to, I have a shameless plug here. I've been working for some time on a documentary, and Joe knows about it. I've been working for some time on a documentary about 9/11 related illness and its effect that it's had on the NYPD. So if anyone knows of somebody active or retired, family member, or somebody that is sick with 9/11 related illness, please give them my number, reach out to me, tell me in any way. I know Frank now has my information, so yeah, if anybody with 9/11 related illness or anybody touched by it, come on over to me.
Okay. Do you mind maybe do you have an email address? You could just throw it in the chat, and anyone who might want to
I will do that right now.
reach out to you that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank, I had gotten the okay from Frank to invite members of the 3 classes that I teach. And I told them in no uncertain terms that it was not required, nor were they going to get any sort of extra credit from attending, because I wasn't going to take attendance. But to those that did attend, I really want to thank you. This is, I have to be honest, this is sort of a different side of me than I normally present in the classroom. And I very, very rarely ever talk about 9/11 unless it's with someone who I was down there with. Because usually for me, there's really no sort of frame of reference. So if I didn't explain something well, you guys know how to reach me. You have my my Google Voice number. You have my email. If you have a question, I'm more than happy to answer it. And I just want to thank you for your dedication for actually coming today.
Thank you for coming and listening to the stories.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody. And thank you to our 3 brave speakers. I hope everyone has a great week and hopefully a peaceful week before Friday, and go from there. So thank you very much for everyone who is coming, and have a blessed week. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.